People who get locked into a vision. All right, that's it, man. That's their drive. That's their passion. Critics don't matter. This don't matter. They're going to do whatever it takes to be the best at what they do.
Elite FTS Table Talk podcast. Back in studio today. Pretty excited about this one.
Yeah.
How about you, Mason?
I'm excited. This is a good one. We got everything. We've got the whole history of what we're going into today.
You know, it's just piggybacking off of a lot of the excitement that we've had on our social media with the strength history posts. Everything from posting classic meets, classic athletes, and I think last night what we did was we did this Guess the Lifter.
Yeah, the mystery lifter based on their accomplishments.
Exactly. And some people said that we were a little too obvious.
See, so I posted on the Twitter, and no one had guessed it right. I had 2 people actually respond and guess, and nowhere close. So I guess it depends who you are, how obvious it is to you.
Yeah, well, it shows where our crowd is too. Like our crowd is, heavy on Instagram. And all the people that were guessing were like nailing it. Like, this is too easy.
Did anybody get it wrong?
Well, I don't know. Some did, and I didn't know if they were just kind of, and if some were
your chain.
goofing around kind of thing, or
probably some of them.
Yeah, some of them were. And no one put my name.
That's a shock.
Yeah, but we're going to go into some of that today. So this is going to be a open forum. So if you're watching live, we need you to participate. So the more comments, questions, ideas that you can throw in the mix, please do. It's going to be great. And then also, if you're watching the recorded version, we're going to stay up on the comments as well, so it'll help add to future shows. So
speaking of the comments, on the last one, we had, I think this one will be more fun because we got powerlifting, which is much more broad than strongman, because strongman's usually, okay, who's the best? Big Z, Kazmaier, Pudzianowski.
Mark Henry.
Mark Henry is we are trying to introduce. Maybe I think he's a GOAT for if you stack all 3 together, because who's his competition? But either way.
That's right.
I think powerlifting's more fun because you've got so many things to pick from, which some people don't like. But
and that's kind of what got you and I talking about this earlier in the week. So I asked you the question, since we're lifting weights here and there is a finite number on the weight that is lifted, what is the metric that people use to determine who is the best? And when we talk about these, full meets, right, where there's the squat, bench, and deadlift, what are the metrics that are used? And there's a couple on here. Maybe you can go into how it's strange on how it's calculated.
Yeah.
So the one that we have is the dots.
I guess I'll just take this over the best I can.
Yeah.
Open powerlifting. I'm sure a lot of people know about it. If you don't, at this point, it's our most up-to-date record of every powerlifting meet ever they're trying to put in there. They probably have succeeded.
Openpowerlifting.org.
Yeah, openpowerlifting.org.
It's
awesome
an amazing
website.
site, yeah.
You can rank people by best squat, bench, best deadlift, best squat. I said that, bench, Jesus. Total, Wilks, and then you can narrow it down. You can be like, hey, what gender, what weight class, what federation, multiply, single ply, literally everything you could ever think of.
Gloss Brenner.
Yeah. So
and that's the thing that, if you are someone who is like me, who doesn't know anything about this, this is interesting. So there's like a scoring chart or scoring algorithm that's called the dots. There's one that's called the Gloss Brenner. There's one called Wilks.
IPF points.
McCullough.
I don't even.
GL points.
If you're like me, you really only know Wilks, because I think that's been the predominant one for about 20 years. And the whole point was we take everybody that's really awesome at powerlifting right now, and we try to level them all to be roughly equal so that the best of the best line up to be similar numbers. But it was old. It was in the 90s or the 80s, or at the very least 2000s, right before this huge explosion of strength sports. And so now that we've had that, we're seeing those demographics represented differently. So now we see more of just everything. We see more women, we see more tiny women, more tiny men, more huge men. And so now people are like, okay, Wilkes is kind of outdated. So we have IPF points, which the IPF tried to create. We have Glossbrenner, which I think Glossbrenner is about as old as Wilkes, but that's a more of a equipped lifting thing, so it doesn't transfer well to raw lifters. And then now we have, I think now everyone's trying to come up with their own thing, so I can't tell you what DOTS is or who came up with it or anything beyond that. But it's the same concept as Wilkes. We have these points to say who's who and who's the best, even if you try to compare them.
We do have some people already on watching.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know where Dave is.
Yeah.
He's
coming soon.
Yeah, Dave will actually be with us here, I believe as early as next week. Mm-hmm. We got some good stuff with him lined up, and he's been extremely busy. This is a very busy...
He's a busy dude.
He's a busy dude. He's running a business. That's where Dave's at.
Yeah.
But he loves this kind of stuff, and he likes.
Well, he was the person who gave us this topic of today.
That's right.
But I'll before we jump into it, because we would love to jump into it. And speaking of business, bands are back in stock. They've been out of stock for 2-3 months because everybody wants bands. Everyone knows Elite FTS.
It's great because now Mason and I can pump. So this is why, I think someone called me a Jack Steve-O.
Yeah, that was the last comment. So we are reading the comments. And
or was that about Mason?
I don't.
Oh, Mason's Jack Steve-O.
I mean, no offense. You kind of look.
I
like
look more
Steve-O.
like Steve-O.
I don't think that's an insult, but
it's fine. I've been called much worse. So yeah, bands are back in stock. We got new swag as usual.
Yeah,
but
new T-shirt, Sunset Squatter.
Sunset Squatter. Yeah, Dave is on is running a business.
He's selling bands.
Selling bands, man. But a couple things. Like, do you know what the Glossbrenner entails? It's a similar.
It's all statistic stuff. It was created by powerlifters, but those guys were also statistic nerds that I wish I could be, but I'm not good enough at math to be. So they did the same thing. You're trying to compare people across weight classes, across years, in a way that makes somewhat of sense. And I know in raw powerlifting, that's often how they pick the best lifter of each meet, because you can have people of everything in each meet competing. But if you take Wilkes, ideally you're like, this was the strongest guy, regardless if he was 110 pounds or 300.
Didn't we also notice that when we were ranking in, I think Glossbrenner, or was it Wilkes, that like the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, the top 5 were actually women in the 123 pound weight class.
So that's why we saw an update to Wilkes. Well, not why, but a lot of people complained about it. A lot of people were like, oh, it's not fair. My Wilkes score is being hurt because we have these. Like I said, when the formula was created, we had very few data points on small women. So on average, they're going to be weaker. But now we have more genetic outliers in the sport because now more people know it exists. Like if we took powerlifting right now and made it the only sport in the United States and you paid up $10 billion for the number 1 spot, every world record would go up because these insane genetic freaks aren't being pulled anywhere else. So now that we're seeing more genetic freaks pulled into powerlifting, we're seeing those things go up. But on
That's
IPF
good.
points still, we still see, I know, I'm going to butcher her name, Daniela Mello is the IPF points champion, and I'm pretty sure also like the Wilkes champion for tested powerlifting. So you still see those outliers. Like I think it's not that those women aren't strong. They're very, very strong,
absolutely.
which is why they're making it up there. But like the top 5, I think you have to get to number 7 by Wilkes until you hit Yuri Belkin, who's the first man on there.
What was the game that you said that you and your buddies would play, where it's like, what filters do you have to put on open powerlifting so that you would rank?
Yeah, it wasn't my game because I've never personally competed in powerlifting besides a mock meet, that doesn't go up on there. But yeah, the joke is you go on open powerlifting and you try to see how high up you can get if you apply every single filter, if you have your age, your division, your year, your state, your whatever.
Mine would require a few more filters. Of
Yeah.
course, mine would be father of two.
Exactly.
Drives a red truck.
Yeah.
And
Present father of two, by the way. There's fathers of two that aren't present.
True.
with a red truck, though.
Yeah, with a red truck.
And okay, fine. And fun fact.
Yeah, exactly. Insert whatever you need to suddenly go from number 600,000 to number 7 with your 800-pound total.
There you go. So if you're watching it, get on openpowerlifting.org and punch your categories in and let us know when you rank.
Yuri Belkin, if you're watching this podcast, enjoy just putting on men.
Yeah,
and
no,
then,
just hitting refresh.
Yeah, hit refresh and watch as you're still up there.
So this is how Dave kind of directed us to research this, and it was he had brought up one of the lifting legends, Steve Goggins.
Yeah.
And Steve had one of the most insane squats in a meet ever.
Dave brought him up because overall he's insane, but for a good video to watch that a lot of people haven't seen that's, burned into his mind as a piece of strength history is the OG 500 kilos lift where he shattered it by 70 pounds. Because everyone talks Eddie Hall, 500 kilos. He broke the record, everything like that. Steve Goggins did it first, in a different thing, but 500 kilos in the squat.
Josh, do you have that clip?
He broke the record by like 70 pounds because he almost broke it.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it goes.
Just watch. But he was almost the former holder at like 1,036 pounds, but he bombed out on bench during that meet, so it didn't count.
So this is 2006, correct?
2003.
03.
So this was. I'm not an equipped power lifter, so I can't speak to the.
I thought this was in the 90s. I had that way off.
No, but a big part is the technology has increased. These multiply suits with your 9 layers of 8 different fabrics stitched in have gotten crazier and crazier. So I would imagine that 17 years ago, these weren't the same thing they're squatting in.
And we all know the smelling salts have gotten more potent.
They've gotten way more potent. I know. Dave talks about, he at one point he's only getting 30 pounds out of a bench shirt. So some people just didn't use them. So 2003 is not that long after when Dave was. I think Dave might have still been powerlifting at that time.
So you and I watch this, and let's tell everybody. No, it's important to note. Just watch how deep Steve Goggins gets on. This is unbelievable.
Oh, I'm sure you got a couple people who tuned out the second they heard multiply squats because they're like, all right, this insane sumo stance done 4-inch range of motion. But Steve,
look at this. He's like folded over.
I have seen raw squats past that were way higher than that. And that dude just sinks it.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I mean, when you and I watched this together, this was my first time seeing it that I recall. And I said, he was folded, right? So it's like, it reminds me of like, when you get stuck, and you're about to drop it, and like you've seen in all the fail videos,
where you dump it over your head.
Dump it over your head. I thought that was going to happen.
Dump 1,100 pounds.
Yeah, forward.
Forward, yeah.
So, but you said that this was kind of his form, right?
I don't know Well, the part about it is if you watch any other multiply squat, they're usually going to have those max width stance. They're going to be really high up and they're going to be really vertical with their torso because they're trying to minimize how far down they need to go before they can come back up. And there's also the factor of you have 1,100 pounds on your back. The suit helps, but the suit helps in the hips and the legs. If you're folded halfway over,
exactly,
you're still holding your bracing.
The suit helping you.
Yeah, what's the suit going to do at that point? You're still braced, holding 1,100 pounds on your back, and it's trying to pull you out of position, and you're holding it.
Incredible, right?
Yeah. But that's why you see those guys normally squat in much different style, that really upright style. Because if they go forward at all, they lose the entire squat.
You lose your suit.
Yeah.
You lose. No, now was it a year before when he was going for a record that they waived off because he didn't go?
Well, I don't. It was in August. He hit 10:36, which would have been the new all-time world record. Another factor to talk about: Steve Goggins was 265 pounds during that meet. He was competing against people like Andy Bolton, who weighed almost 330 pounds, and he won the meet overall and set these world records regardless of weight class. He didn't hit the 275 record that day. He hit the heaviest squat of all time that day.
Let that sink in.
Yeah, yeah.
And Andy Bolton could be considered the GOAT.
You know, deadlifted over 1,000 pounds twice, competed in World's Strongest Man. Definitely not, anyone to scoff at. I think that day they tied on total overall, but Goggins beat him out because he weighed 60 pounds less. But he beat him on squat, that's for sure.
But that was so in that meet before where they waived off his.
Yeah. In August, he hit 10:36, but he bombed out on bench. So it didn't count because you have to finish the entire meet. You just get, you get kicked out. You don't get to deadlift. You don't get to anything. He missed all 3 attempts on bench. So his squat didn't count anymore, even though it was at the time a world record. So instead, he just adds 60, 70 pounds to it a couple months later and shatters the world record twice. Because the attempt before that broke the record at 1,070 pounds, which was nuts. Everyone just witnessed an all-time world record shattered. And then he goes and he does it again.
The other one that Dave had mentioned when we were talking about, Steve's 1102 was obviously Dave Hoff.
Yeah. Well, you can't talk multiply powerlifting without bringing up Dave Hoff because he's still out here breaking records every day. He's brought the open multiply records to new levels. I think it's him and then Donnie Thompson, and there's still a several 100-pound gap between their totals. So that says a lot. Donnie's held his spot for years and years
Super
and years. Super D, 3K.
Mr. 3000.
Mr. 3000. Yeah, and he's held that spot, and only one person's been able to beat him, and it's just huge gaps every step you go. And people are trying to beat him. There's still people out there trying to beat Hoff, and he's still beating the records from the booming time of equipped powerlifting when it was at its peak.
Josh, we have Hoff, right?
Yeah.
All right, here's 1210, I believe. Mason can confirm.
Yeah. This was the other under 275 squat world record, or this was the current number one. It's still held by Dave Hoff,
and it looks like it was shot in HD, which is
well, it was shot in 2013, which says a lot because it took 3 years for anyone to beat Goggins' record, and they only beat it by a couple pounds. Although 1210 is a lot heavier than 1100, it still took him 10 years to get to that point. 10 years of people, 10 years of competitions, 10 years of equipment changing. And what was?
It does take him a while to get.
You got to get set up. Well, that's the thing. Like I was saying, no matter what, it's 1,200 pounds on your back. So if you don't set up right, you're screwed anyways. But that's kind of that's why I'm saying people tune out when they see multiply, is because that depth isn't what people have come to expect in raw powerlifting. But Goggins
he was criticized for this depth, but when I watch it, I don't see there's anything wrong with that. Do you? I mean,
I think it's fair to. They have to hold a consistent standard. I didn't get a chance to look it up, and I'll probably be totally wrong and look like a huge idiot when I say this right now. But the rules for depth in most equipped lifting are hamstring parallel to the ground, versus raw. It's crease of the hip below knee, and that doesn't sound like a huge difference until you watch it in action, because that's the difference between Goggins and what Hoff just did, which is still a 1,210-pound squat, but it's higher, and while it's still passed, a lot of people don't like that.
Do you think the simple fact that, like we talked about Goggins being like making this a low back extension?
Well, it's a good morning.
Good morning.
That's why everyone at Westside, I don't know if Goggins was at Westside at the time or ever, but that's why they did so many good mornings in equipped lifting, is because if you went forward, you had to be prepared to recover that. And that's what a good morning is. You're sitting there practicing recovering a bad squat over and over again.
There's no doubt about it. But that's, I think, do you think that form or how he was folded over like that could have created some type of illusion to make it appear as if he went deeper than he really did. Regardless, I mean, that's a feat of strength that you can't, like, I don't know that. You look at Hoff as like completely upright.
Well, there's no bonus points. You're not graded on where your torso is. You know,
Right.
I could have my sternum facing the ground, and I could still not be at depth, right? Just as I can have my knees 9 inches over my toes, and what matters is where your hips are. You know, where your hips are in relation to your knees. So when those guys squat, the reason why I did it, it's more efficient. You're more efficient if you can stay all the way up here, but get your hips to go down, versus Goggins, who had to fold over a bit to get his hips to go down lower. Because you see raw squats set like that all the time who don't have the same kind of weird suit stuff going on. You see Ben Pollock squats, very, very horizontal torso position.
Yeah.
And Lane Norton squats, very, very horizontal torso position. But something I think that should be pointed out, it's not a universal rule, but those guys have very short torsos and very long legs. So they have to sit back really, really, really far until they hit depth. And the more you sit back, the more you got to counterbalance and lean forward a little bit if you're not squatting like these equipped guys are.
Who's your favorite squatter of all time?
I mean, it's hard to deny Ray Williams is insane in terms of raw squats. Like I think he's beat out. At one point, he was beating out the untested records. He was beating out, like, with wraps. He might have even beat some single ply records. I don't know about that. But he's leagues above everybody in terms of squats.
You know what? Do some of these guys compete raw with wraps, single ply, multiply? I mean, do they do all of it, or are they just like...
Yeah, I know. I think Blaine Sumner used to be all raw, and then with single ply, I could be wrong. But it's a very common transition to go. Either you did equipped because it was popular, like about 10 years ago, you know, you might have done equipped because it was the thing, and then switched to raw. Like Matt Wenning did that. He hit a bunch of equipped records, and he went and hit a bunch of raw records. And then you see a lot of guys these days who they age, and their hips hurt at the bottom of a squat, or their shoulder hurts at the bottom of a bench, but they throw on a shirt, and now it relieves a lot of that pressure, or they throw on a squat suit and briefs. And so that's the way that they can still chase a big total. You know, they can chase PRs, they can chase world records.
Raw lifting's a young man's game, is what you're saying.
Not necessarily. We've got guys that have been doing it for a long time, but I know that's a very common thing. Is like, I can't squat without briefs anymore, you know, because my hips hurt, or I can't bench without a shirt or a slingshot or something like that.
So that is almost a perfect segue, really, for us, because we got into this with Dave and had a pretty good conversation about when you bring up this site, which we love.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the 2 months that I've been here, I'm a fitness guy by heart, but learning and kind of falling in love with this powerlifting thing.
It's a virtual museum of every world record ever, basically.
Well, yeah, that's where we come into every day. So, but we look.
Well, I meant that website. You can go on. You can see anything that's ever happened in powerlifting ever.
But when you look at this and you bring it up, in some of the categories, I'm seeing names that I've never heard before at the top.
Yeah.
And the guys that in our strength history that we've been posting about are household names.
Yeah.
Even for me, who is not a powerlifting guy, you know, by my nature, but just being in the fitness world, have heard about these guys and read about them in magazines and so forth. But let's take a guy like Yuri Belkin, okay? I had never heard his name until yesterday.
Yeah.
And that may come as a shock to, the people that follow us. But the real question is why haven't I?
He's Russian, first off. So even with the best social media game you could have, if it's not in English, we're not going to see a ton of it. But
there's some non-Russians on this list. So look,
yeah,
I have raw with wraps brought up. Okay, Yuri Belkin's the man. Okay, and there is not another person on this list that I've heard of until we get down to Larry Williams at number 8. And why have I heard of him? because he's
social media.
He's
very large on social media.
He's done some amazing stuff on social. He's done some like stuff where.
Well, of course, we've got it sorted by dots, don't we?
We got it sorted by
dots.
Because
that's the default now. So apparently,
Yeah.
dots has been more widely introduced than I was aware of.
Probably.
But I do think it's interesting. Well, I think an even bigger point than that, it's kind of the same point in the other order, is number 3. I get to Cody. I'm going to butcher it. Someone's going to show this to him. Blazik.
Yeah.
So I know he exists because he's from Iowa. I'm from Iowa. I know he's a
Hawkeyes.
big name there. Well, we're not all Hawkeyes. Some of us are Cyclones.
Sorry.
But
it's not like Ohio where everyone is OSU.
Everyone's a Buckeye here.
But I knew he was big, but I did not realize if I go on Open Powerlifting and I open up the men that he is number 3 of all time. And so I wonder, I'm like, is he just bigger than I just didn't realize it? You go on social media, he's deadlifting at Deadlifting and Stuff, I think, on Instagram, and he's only got like 4,000 followers. You're telling me the number 3 best raw with wraps powerlifter of all time only got 4,000 followers? Like, what is happening with guys to be considered the best of all time versus guys that aren't, if their numbers are similar,
Well, that's I think that's the whole point of this is like, let's say we did a Guess the Lifter.
Yeah.
Right? And we put the info on Yuri Belkin. I don't know that we'll have, first off, I don't think we'll get the engagement on social media that we want, but think about it. When we did Goggins, who is not on, I think you have to go to Multiply to get him even on the list, but more people know about him, yet he's, I would say, at the moment, not as involved as this Yuri Belkin guy.
I would say Yuri's kind of weird because I haven't seen much about him in like the past year and a half because he hasn't done anything. But of course, he's sitting at the top, so you don't need to do much when you're at the top.
That's right.
I think he's a big name amongst those who have been following powerlifting, for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, because he's been battling it out for heaviest deadlift of all time between
at 28. He's 28 right now.
Yeah, true. That's also a very big point. But I think it depends really where you've been on what is considered a household name for you. Because for some people, if you brought up Yuri, if you go into a powerlifting gym right now where most people are raw and you say the words Yuri Belkin, not a ton of people aren't going to know who you're talking about.
Right.
But I thought this is kind of funny. It's almost the exact opposite. Is I know Steffi Cohen, who's at the top for best raw lifter by dots, regardless of anything else, or Wilkes. She went to Westside. Louis Simmons did not know who she was. He asked if she was a bodybuilder.
That was a couple years ago at this point, though, right?
Yeah, but she had
was
held
already
multiple world
right?
records at that point.
That's but here's the other thing is, Westside guys aren't on social media.
Well, Louis not.
Right. Louis definitely not.
But he knows big numbers. But he knows big equipped numbers because that's where he mostly works. He works a lot of things these days. If anyone says he's only an equipped guy, that's kind of foolish.
No, he's with fighters and
NFL players and everything. In another life, Louis would be reincarnated as an MMA fighter.
Did Sam Bird ever is he on that list currently? I know he was probably 10 years.
What, is that a Multiply guy?
I think he was Multiply and did some raw with wraps type stuff. There was a comment about that.
He's not in the top 30 for raw with wraps.
I'd check
on Multiply.
Oh.
This is. Let me ask you a question since we're talking about wraps.
Is this your secret question?
It's my secret question. What is the deal with wraps and super glue?
I don't know. What is the deal with?
What is it called? Like Gorilla Glue? I saw that some people will put Gorilla Glue on their wraps.
I have not seen that.
And I don't know
and then on their skin, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know exactly how it works. That's why I was going to ask you. Hey, listen.
If so, they're really dumb.
Yeah, we got some folks watching live. What's the deal? Have you heard of the super glue with the wraps.
I can give my best guess based on literally nothing. This is I had an awesome professor who did WAGs, WAG, wild ass guesses. So I have to preface this with this is a wild ass guess. But I know I've seen spray glue used.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because Gorilla Glue is a whole different story.
It's a spray glue.
Gorilla Glue is not a spray glue.
It's spray.
You glob it on. It
No.
expands.
I've
used a lot of Gorilla Glue.
They've got a spray.
They probably do.
They got spray version.
I know Donnie. He's really the only person I've seen because I don't follow a lot of like wraps related stuff because I never worn them. But I know Donnie for shoes.
Super D.
Yeah, he pulls out he takes off his socks. He pulls out the soles of his shoes and he sprays spray glue inside of the shoes on meet days because then you have maximum grip because you don't want a shoe to do anything besides give you more grip. It shouldn't squish at all. It shouldn't slide around at all. Your foot absolutely should not slide around in it at all. So if you've got it laced the best you can, but you're wearing socks, you're sliding around at least a little bit.
Right.
But if you have just your foot, just the least amount of sole possible, glue, and then lace as tight as possible, you just, you got your half percent you needed.
Can you put glue on the bottom? Stick
like a
them or
flubber
something.
scenario.
Like a little stick them on the bottom and spray glue.
I'd have to imagine that would depend on each rules. I don't know if there's specific rules against it yet.
All right, I see Ken's name, Cerberus Ken.
Oh, Cerberus.
Yes, he's spray glue is used to increase grip.
Yeah.
Wrap to the skin and also wrap to the wrap itself.
Makes sense.
Oh, sorry.
He'd be the
there
guy
you
to
go.
know.
He would know know what it's all about.
Ken, when are you mailing me one of your new lower belt like heat back belts? Because they look awesome, and I would like one.
I saw those. Look pretty cool.
I had the deadlifting belt, but I never sprang for the. I think all real strongmen. This is off topic, but all real strongmen they have the soft belt. And because if you're a strongman, there's no rules on how many belts you can wear, so you should be wearing like minimum 2-3 belts. But everyone has the same like. I don't know which brand it is. Normally they have the gray soft belt, but now Cerberus, someone who puts out a lot of things that most people are interested in, you can throw in that other belt now, and now you can have one designed by strongman for strongmen. Because I don't think the other one was. It was just the best we had at the time. But now we might have something better. So send me one. I'll plug you a second time if I'm ever allowed on again after this.
We'll take it out of your paycheck.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, that's good. So now when we look at, let's get back into this. We like to kind of figure out who is.
Well, I guess I have a general question, maybe for you, maybe for the people
audience
listening.
Yeah.
But it was one Dave brought up. We kind of talked about this, but what is the thing that's making people remembered as the GOAT? Because when you say the GOAT, people always talk. Ed Cohn. Always,
yes.
He's not even really a raw guy. He was a single ply guy, so it's closer, but he wasn't a 100% raw guy. People still talk about him today,
right?
Even though other people have beat his numbers. So why do people still talk about Cohn as the greatest of all time? Is it social media? Because he's got some social media. Is it the fact he still is active in the community? Because he's at meets, he's on social media. He might be coaching. I know he's in YouTube videos. He's out and about and he's doing things so people remember him. But if Ed Cohn stopped right now and never showed his face in public again, 5 years from now, would we still be talking about him?
That's well, and
I would say yes.
Yeah, because
I think he's more known for the way he dominated. I don't know if his social media necessarily plays into it.
Well, we're talking about Goggins setting a 90-pound squat record while weighing 60 pounds less, and I don't see Goggins talked about much.
That's a good point.
Well, here's kind of my thinking, and it's just from my digital marketing background, right? I think that these guys who've had these 20, 30-year careers, keep in mind a lot of these guys were in the game when sponsorship just meant they sent you nothing.
Yeah.
An invoice.
Sponsorship didn't mean anything.
Sponsorship meant they sent you a bill for the equipment that you got to wear. Okay. So there was no money to be made doing that. So now either you had to be a trainer or you had to write books or you had to
teach seminars.
You had to teach school. You had to be a gym teacher. You had to be whatever your
you
job
you had to
was.
weld. You had to.
You had to be. Yeah, you had to work.
No
right?
one's job was a power lifter.
No one's job
one
was
at
a
all.
power lifter. Now I don't know that that's changed a whole lot, but because I don't know what sponsorship deals get you or prize money or whatever.
You're not sponsored.
I'm not sponsored, no. But the I think that these guys had built out touch points, extensions of themselves through the community, through giving tips, through coaching, through having clients, and then developing online clients at this point. Like that's what Dave said about Steve. Steve works online.
Yeah.
So now he has extended his reach to the point where it's not just him, but he's got minions and clients. And
he had a gym, didn't he? I don't know if he still does,
I think
but at
it's in
some point he did.
Georgia area. But they've made extensions of themselves through the people that they have coached, and now that those people are like, when you coach somebody, you love your coach, and all you want to do is like brag about him and talk about him, and
he
this
knows
is like
everything.
yeah,
he was so strong.
He was so strong.
Or in Goggins' case, he's deadlifted 800 pounds every year for over 30 years, which is nuts. 1986 in competition, he hit 805, and then 2005 was his last meet before like an 8-year hiatus, still hitting over 800. We had a video of him in Elite FTS pulling 800 in 2013 when Dave wrote an article about Steve Goggins in 2013. So don't think like, all of a sudden we're like, who's the person no one's ever heard of? Let's throw him up. No, 7 years ago, Dave was like, why aren't people talking about Goggins?
Still, right? Yeah.
And so he had pulled 800 for 30 years of his life. This man was 49, still pulling 800 just to check off that yearly check mark.
Man, that's like, my game
I've
is
been alive that long.
when you play golf, you try to shoot your age, and it's not until you turn about 90 when you finally get it.
Yeah.
And even then, that'd be pretty impressive.
Well, mine's on the, I do it on the mini golf.
Yeah.
In the mini golf circuit. But even then, that's incredible. 30 years.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't like he was some one-trick pony, He hit like 1,100 one time, The idea that it's a laughable thing to break a world record by everybody for 70 pounds, but
so people are still talking about him, right? People are talking about Ed Cohn. People are talking about David mentioned some other names.
Bridges.
People
still talk about Donnie.
People talk about,
but he's a little more recent, I think. Oh, I realized it was Spud who actually was the first person under 275 to beat Goggins 3 years later, because only 10 people have ever beat that 1102 almost 17 years ago. So it's not like he's gone by and everyone squats 1,300 pounds these days and equipped like everyone wants you to think.
So
but
there's 10 people that did it.
10 other people besides Goggins, and most of them only done it by a couple pounds.
Mark Bartley.
Was it John Norman who we had the video? We have the video of
John
it.
Norman.
He was the next person right above Goggins. So as a comparison of like, hey, what do other 1,100 pound squats look like?
Yeah.
Here's a hint: they don't look like Goggins squat. Goggins, no one. I don't think anyone. I didn't look at everybody, but if anyone wants to prove me wrong, let me know if anyone else was sinking the squats like Goggins did at 1,100 pounds.
Well, there was rumor that he had a good morning session he never got to, so he threw it in on meet day.
I saw something he'd done good mornings over 1,000 pounds. I mean, if we're gonna spend, seriously, that wasn't a joke.
No, I believe it. If anyone could.
Yeah. So that's pretty good depth for multiply.
I
That's
think
multiply depth, but it's not what raw powerlifters like to see. They like to see him as deep as possible. It looks cool, see the Olympic weightlifter with his knees 3 feet over his toes, but 2 white lights gets you a world record. You don't need 3. You don't need your internet bonus points.
I was thinking about that today during my workout.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was squatting, and I was in here by myself.
Putting your 9th plate on each side.
I wasn't doing a lot of weight, but I was thinking, I had been from the school of thought where it's like, well, what's the point of putting on all this gear, right? Which I'm sure is a argument that people like to go back and forth and
Constantly.
argue about at cocktail parties, all the time. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, how badass is it when you have over 1,000 pounds on the rack and you put it on your back and you push it up? It, to me, is like back in baseball during the steroid era when guys would hit the ball for fucking ever.
Yeah.
Like, just gone. Like, further than you've ever seen anyone hit a baseball. And that's when baseball was, like, at its most popular time.
No one gives a shit. No one cares about every single asterisk. They're not going to read, why this didn't count. They're going to go, holy shit, that was 1,300 pounds.
Exactly.
Well, that's why it took so long for Raw to take off, is because when people were watching 1,300-pound squats, no one's going to be like, oh, but this is how much the suit added. People do that nowadays, but back then it was like, I want to squat more than that other fucking guy. And if I have to put on, 9 fucking tuxedos to do it, then I'll fucking do it. And, eventually people are like, okay, we've gone too far for my preferences and I'm going to do something else. But that's what it was at the time. You're like, I don't give a shit what I'm wearing. I just want to beat the next guy. I want to be number one. I want to squat 1,100 fucking pounds.
Everybody is on the same, playing field when you're competing against someone else and going for those world records in, those categories. And I think it really comes down to how awesome does it look? You know what I mean? How awesome. And for these guys that are doing Raw right now, and maybe eventually we'll switch categories as their body deteriorates or whatever, or they get bored with it. It'll be interesting to see the steps these guys take, but also it's like, how do these guys become more relevant, these younger guys? Like Larry Wheels showed us, I think, the model for how to become relevant in the sport.
Well, that's the thing, is in the sport has two different definitions you can look at. Is it in the sport on Instagram? Because,
good point.
Social media plays a huge role in powerlifting these days. And that's probably the reason why it blew up so much, is because now you can go be like, holy shit, look at these freaks on the internet. This is awesome. But, are people going to be like, are people going to rule out Yuri because of Larry, because of Instagram? If you're looking only in the scope of powerlifting, not going to happen. People are waiting in powerlifting. People are like, okay, Larry, do what you want on Instagram with your hidden bumper plates sometimes and stuff
or
like
whatever,
that.
Right?
Yeah, but they want to see the next time he's going to beat a world record is really what most people are holding. Not most, but a lot of people are holding out for.
There's this, I think, almost like a generational gap in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, where there is the guys that we talk about in strength history. Your Mark Bartleys, your Donnie Thompsons, your Ed Cones, these guys that we talk about every day around here. And then there's a gap. And then there's this younger crowd that's coming up. And we were just talking about how popular this sport has gotten in high school.
Yeah. Well, weirdly enough, I think a big chunk of high school powerlifting, as it's kind of a remnant from the past as its own sport, is still equipped. I think that's something.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I might be speaking out of my ass here because I don't really know. I didn't, there was no powerlifting in my high school, but I know, like, for example, my girlfriend competed equipped powerlifting in high school, and I guess that's a thing. And I know a lot of times I see big single ply squats coming out of like Texas and shit like that.
Right.
Because I think it's. Who are their coaches? Their coaches aren't 20-year-old guys who got into raw powerlifting 5 years ago. Their coaches are guys who have been powerlifting for 20 years. So I think it's just naturally from when it first occurred, we see a lot of high school equipped lifting more so than we might think.
We were talking.
Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we were talking about this with Scott Paltos, Chris Bartle. They are elite level strength coaches, and they were saying that in Texas, where they feel that is a hotbed of athletic talent,
where people really care about football there. It's a huge deal. It's not a high school sport, it's a sport.
So it's not. It's in a place like Dallas, where they have massive schools and people think that sports are very, very important and have unbelievable facilities and can pay a strength coach
Yep.
6 figures.
Well, and they care enough to pay him at all. You know, how many schools out there have their old high school football coach doing whatever program he had written down in 1982 and sharing it with the students, and they're like, "Yep, you nailed it." You know,
Yeah, just print it off the internet.
This is peak strength and conditioning versus Texas, where they're like, I'm going to take the guy who's got a master's degree and freaking 10 years of experience at a college,
Right,
and I'm going to pay him whatever I need to.
They could be the Cowboys strength coach for,
In some places, I think that's I don't think a high school strength coach is anything to scoff at, especially
Not
in
at
the
all.
right place.
Yeah, not in Texas.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then you think about, okay, well, we know. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to know that football is important in Texas. High school football is important in Texas. So the second sport for these guys isn't baseball anymore. It isn't basketball or wrestling. It's powerlifting.
Yeah.
Why? Because they want to be better football players.
Yeah.
And when you get down the line and realize, shit, I'm not going to college to play football. I'm not as good, but I'm strong as hell.
Yeah.
What am I going to compete in?
Well, that's Ray Williams. I think he works at a community college with their football team, not as a strength coach. I think it's an actual football coach. And he kind of got into powerlifting for fun. According to him, the first time he went to a meet and set the American squat record, he was maxing out for fun because the bars at his gym couldn't fit any more plates.
That was his chance.
That was his chance. He's like, I need to go to this meet because that's the only place I can actually max out at. And I just want to see where I'm at.
Oh, what a cool story.
And you see high schoolers who are shattering. They're coming up to the adult records on like squats and powerlifting and stuff like that. And they go and they commit to some, not tiny, because I don't know the specifics of every person, but they're not committing to huge football, programs. They're committing to random ones basically. And meanwhile, if powerlifters had any money, they'd be paying these kids, thousands of dollars to just powerlift.
Dude, I'm going to make a prediction right now that's probably already been made. I'm going to predict that these records are going to be beat by guys at 25.
Well, what? Yeah. Post NFL guys? Is that your?
No. Like guys who didn't make it to the NFL.
Yeah.
Fresh legs, they haven't gotten beat up. And they are going to have gotten some unbelievable coaching at the high school level, come up through college with those same coaches or beyond, and have the benefit of nutrition guidance and programming guidance and access to facilities that some of these other guys, like you said, a guy had to go to a meet to be able to do his PR.
Yeah.
Right? Or to do his max. So
do we have anybody who's made any comment on our greatest of all time discussion, whether it's naming names or it's
there's
saying
been a couple that they're saying need to be talked about. One of them was Sam Bird.
Yeah.
Bud Jeffries.
Bud Jeffries, does he even compete in powerlifting? He's a cool dude. He's got an awesome Instagram where he does like circus strength feats. He rides ATVs and throws hatchets and does handstand push-ups and
send it.
He's the
Full
ultimate
send
it. Yeah.
There's a couple names here also.
Jackson Powell, 17-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's probably who we're unintentionally talking about.
We had also saw a video of a guy doing a hang clean.
Yeah. Iowa's known for their very large guys, and it was a 450 for 4 hang clean. And like, oh God, like I don't know where hang clean stack percentage wise towards max is, but that guy, I don't if he's ever done a deadlift before, even if he hasn't, could probably hit like 800 right now. But where's he going? He's not going to go hit a powerlifting meet because they told him he's strong. He was trying out for the NFL. He's hitting like a 40-inch vertical.
If anything, he should transfer to Ohio State. Now look,
well, I think he's done now, but 450 for 4 on a hang clean is nuts. Like I could probably hit like a plate for 4.
Well, we were talking about that earlier. I honest to God think
we're not.
I think I can hang clean more than I can power clean.
You're wrong, but continue.
Because here's why. I have to take it off the ground.
But how many inches do you get to accelerate the bar off the ground before you get to get your hips into it?
You got to remember, I'm not the tallest guy in this building.
Yeah, but it's percentages. It doesn't work out.
I think my hip movement from here to here will help me accelerate the bar more so than having to pull it off the ground, then getting my hips and bringing it up.
What does everybody else have to say? I can't debate you about.
If you're
hang
watching
cleans.
live, can you hang clean more than you power clean?
And if you can, why are you wrong? Goggins, anything to pull you off the hang clean topic. I'm going to give you a little more background because I had some notes on him. So just to throw it all out before we get way, way more off topic than we already are. That year, the year he hit 1,100, the second best squat in the same weight class of anybody across the nation was 976 pounds. It was the number 2 guy in that weight class was 130 pounds lighter than him in the squat.
So you've heard of that, the 4-minute mile rule?
Yeah. Once you break it, everybody breaks it basically.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it was like a day after. And now we're in the magazine that you got. If you want to show them.
I can.
So this wasn't to me that long ago, right? 03 to me doesn't seem like a long time
To
ago.
me, that was most of my life. But
Yeah. But when I think of that magazine came out 1 month after he did that lift.
Yeah.
And so that was in March.
Yeah.
He set the record in February, and
I think it was the opposite. I think this was the rushed version, so they got the really awesome picture of it. I think I brought out the wrong magazine, the other one, but March 28th he hits this world record. And so they had time to put the cover on there, but they didn't even have time to write an article about it.
There's no article, but he was on the cover.
There's an article next month about Goggins hitting it because they only had a couple days of turnaround. But now we have social media, we have open powerlifting, where if Yuri Belkin hits another freaking deadlift or squat world record,
we know about it like right this second.
Oh, and
as soon as he does
you've got every single account posting it.
and you got a video of it. And
you've got a Twitch stream of Thor hitting 1,100.
Right.
How many media versions of Andy Bolton's world record deadlift went out? It was a magazine, probably. That's it. And maybe someone mailing their grandma, clippings out of a newspaper about, look at this deadlift that this guy just hit.
Do you think that will increase the popularity of the sport? Or
Social
if it
media
hasn't already?
It is. I think we've seen this blow up past 5-6 years versus if you pull up the records or even just the raw numbers of amount of people who competed in 2010 versus 2020, it's insane. And it's almost entirely off of a couple guys on YouTube channels who really got this moving. Like Johnny Candido, that name might not be anything to you, but at the time when I got started lifting weights seriously, he was one of 3 people you could reference on YouTube. And then you would Johnny Candido, he's a raw powerlifter, still lifts, still out there competing, but he was one of these YouTubers. One of my friends is an absolute beast who absolutely doesn't watch this podcast, so I won't even bother. But
don't give him a shout out.
No shout out for you. He started powerlifting. This is his story. He Googles how to get bigger calves on YouTube.
Yep.
Or he searches it.
I've searched that before.
Yeah. And someone, I don't know even who it was, told him that he has to start powerlifting to get bigger calves. That's the only reason he started doing powerlifting. So
I believe it.
You think he would have gotten into that any other way? How do you even get into it if you didn't do it in high school or you don't go to a powerlifting gym because someone told you it even existed?
I was, my younger brother is a CrossFit guy. Actually, both of my younger brothers are just CrossFit dudes. They love it. And I've got the brother that's closest to me in age, he's built like a bodybuilder. And my youngest brother is built like a marathon runner. Okay? But they both do CrossFit. Mm. And my middle brother knows how to program it all. And I would ask him the same thing. I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing for your arms? Because his arms are so big. It's like, I'm doing Olympic lifting to get my arms bigger. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, hang cleans. I'm like, do you think you can hang clean more than you can power clean? Just joking.
Yeah. That's my Goggins material, I guess. If you have to ask me top people right now, I'd say John Hack. He's a guy who's really up and coming. He just switched out of tested powerlifting. Now he's doing untested raw with wraps with deadlift bar type stuff, and he's already he held a ton of untested or tested records, and then he went untested and he broke those too. So kind of tells you it's more about the athlete than the testing.
Who's this guy?
Pull My Beard, a very funny guy on Instagram who.
So he does a lot of stuff with us.
Well, he was out here not long ago. He was in Columbus before he moved. From what I can gather from Instagram and nothing else, because I don't personally know him, sadly.
We posted his video of
Very
him.
heavy squats.
Yeah, and one of my buddies messaged me and said, "Man," he's like, "how many guys are there out there like him?" And he's like, "You don't hear about it." He's like, "I don't hear about him." He runs in the fitness and bodybuilding circles. He's like, "I don't really hear of him." He's like, "But
how many people fucking squat 900 pounds that I don't know about?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was his question. I said, "You know what? I don't know,
but way more than you think.
But they all know each other."
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's one of those sports where I remember hearing stories about NBA basketball where like the players knew each other at like 7 years old.
Yeah.
Because they were all playing
These youth tournaments or whatever.
youth tournaments, right? And it's like it's almost kind of the same kind of crew. They all already know each other. You may not know them, but
The amount of people.
what's that number? Like, what is the squat number that you have to do for people that are already in the
Probably 9.
Well, it also
900?
depends on your weight too, though.
True. Yeah. If we just go no Wilkes in the jungle type guys where it's only super heavyweights matter, I imagine anything above 900 is something where people know really who you are if you've done it in a competition, no matter your weight class.
Not 800.
800 for a smaller guy absolutely is a world record in most classes, especially if you're tested in sleeves instead. I mean, hell, we can pull it up, we can be like, if we sort open powerlifting by squat, how far do we have to go back until we hit 900? There are, holy moly, a lot of people hit exactly 900. 96 people have squatted over 900 in a powerlifting meet in reps. 96. So even then, you might not know everybody who squatted over 900. You might know half. But
Is that more than you thought were going to be on there?
I don't know. I was kind of thrown off when I was thinking about it, but it's probably a little more than I would expect. But
So what do you say? Probably another 200 additional people over 800?
Well, let's bring this up. 16 people have squatted 1,000 or more. That's a huge number, and 16 people have done it. I mean, obviously,
That's still,
relative to the
that's
entire
like-
world, but
Yeah, that is still rare.
And you're talking raw, right?
with reps,
Right.
if people really, really care.
But no gear.
No gear, no single ply.
suits.
But another, if we're talking about John Hack moving from division to division and being one of the best, Dan Bell, God, I'm on like 9 points right now. But Dan Bell, he hit the raw with reps open world record that no one's probably going to touch for months or years. But now he's playing a single ply, and he's already near world records in like his first couple of months of single ply, I'm pretty sure. So that's kind of it. The GOAT is the GOAT, whether you're in multiply, whether you're in single ply. Like Dave and JM, they said it on their podcast. You can plop those guys any division, any year, any whatever, and they'll fucking figure it out. They'll figure out how to make a world record happen.
So there's a couple names in here. Like he's we're dropping a herd of goats here. Ed Cohn, who we talked about.
Yeah.
Donnie Thompson, who we talked about. Dave Hoff, we talked about. Chuck V. Louis Simmons.
Yeah.
Dave Tate. Matt Wedding. Mark Bell.
How many of those guys are still on social media you just named? Most of them, right? Hoff still breaks records. Was there anyone that's not on social media that just got named?
Louis Simmons.
Well, Louis Simmons doesn't count. Louis Simmons is his own media.
That's right.
Everyone else will post him. He doesn't have to
Chuck.
post himself.
I've never seen Chuck.
Chuck's the hidden guy. Well, that's kind of why Chuck's known, is because he won't do anything. No, everyone always wants more Chuck. No one ever gets too much Chuck because he doesn't talk to anybody. They can't get him on any podcast. He disappeared from lifting. I think only recently came back, and everyone's like, get him on the podcast.
Is he in Columbus?
Yeah. Well, he's a West Side guy.
Yeah.
Was/is again, but I think he kind of dipped out for a while and was literally untraceable.
Probably just making gains.
Apparently. I could go on a Chuck tangent, but I'll leave it at that.
What do you know about, and I've heard his name a lot in here, is Matt Wenning. What do you know?
West Side guy. He's in Columbus. He's got a gym in Columbus. West Side guy, set a bunch of multiply records, moved into Raw, set a bunch of records again. Now he's just a big social media guy, a lot of YouTube, a lot of Instagram. So, like, I think that's why he gets brought. Oh, it's not only it's why he gets brought up, because obviously he holds multiple world records in multiple sports. But I think comparable guys, they don't get talked about. You know?
I don't see him on the multiply dot list. Dave Hoff, Sean Frankel.
I don't know.
There's a couple names. Brian Carroll, we've talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Crockett's on here.
Carroll's helping out Dan Bell get into gear so he can go break all of his records.
Interesting.
Yeah. He was on the podcast.
That's right. Well, that's good, man. So to kind of recap and wrap this up here, we had talked about where Steve Goggins ranks on the all-time great list.
Yeah.
Where would you rank him on the all-time great list?
Dave's 2013 article was made because some magazine published best 10 powerlifters of all time. So that's what Dave kicked off with. He's like, this dude needs to frickin' be up there because he's strong as shit. And he still has a social media presence, which I think is super underrated. Like, he's got a ton of videos, ton of Instagram stuff.
Awesome content.
People should check him out 100%. I know I subscribe to everything I could find him on. I think I might be totally wrong here because I didn't get to confirm this with Dave. Cece Holcomb, one of the women who's like at least number 5 ever, was coached by him at least at some point. I think he had some videos of her doing stuff. So maybe she was just in the gym one day, but I think she had some relationship with him in terms of coaching.
Fred Hatfield was another one that
someone guessed on Twitter that Fred Hatfield was who Goggins was because he's
the
Dr. Squat. Yeah.
Squat MD.
Squat MD.
So let me ask you then, where would you put Goggins then in a top 10?
Well, that's the problem. If I'm comparing every single powerlifter ever, I don't know. I don't have the same perspective that Dave and everyone who was there had, because at the time, I'm sure that year Goggins was one of the most talked about people. Like, how could you not talk about that? We still talk about Eddie. I'm sure a couple years after, they still talked about Goggins.
Right.
But to me, Goggins was a guy who popped up on Elite FTS sometimes, and had articles and videos. But he wasn't like, oh, holy shit, that's the guy who squatted 500 kilos.
So we already know that he is one of 16 people that have squatted.
One of 11. Well,
over 1,100. 1,100, right?
I don't know open, but continue.
Okay, so like if we have to look at his deadlift and bench, where do they compare against the people that were?
I don't think they were as good.
Well, his deadlift was still up there, I think.
Well, he pulled 965 in the gym with straps and 900 with hook grip. So
881 in competition when he was 39.
Crazy. Where is it?
I need an answer on this before we sign off.
What's the actual question?
Where would you rank them all time?
I can't. I don't. I lack the perspective, the history perspective, to rank him properly.
That's okay. This is the beauty of this because what we want is we want
Steve Goggins, for number 45, all squats ever.
Number 45 in squats.
Ever against any weight class, anything.
45 all time.
In his weight class, though, he was number 11 still. So,
where was his bench?
A lot lower, if I had to take a wild guess.
I think around 600 equipped. Or no.
I can pull it up right now. 600 flat. But he had 551 single ply, so not exactly shabby. Who knows? People's joints change over time, Like if he was missing benches and meets just prior, he might have been. I'm just speculating. Let's get a wild ass guess.
So it's probably safe that we could say that Goggins is probably the most underrated powerlifter of all time.
He would make the list easy.
Top three most underrated of all time.
Yeah.
I'll let you cop out on that one. I'll let you cop out.
Well, where would you put him then?
Well, I don't know.
Exactly.
I would probably put him as top 3 most underrated of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to
I
say.
think we all agree on that one.
But in terms of raw strength, it's hard to compare people over time and over divisions. I can tell you if he was the best by miles during the years that he competed, then if you put him in powerlifting today, he would still be really fucking good at powerlifting. And I'll hold to everybody.
Relevant,
Anyone
yeah.
who's ever been number 1 in their weight class that year would do just fine any other year.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Yeah. That we agree on, because I know we've talked about that before, and Dave has mentioned it a million times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't compare against years, kids. It's not cool.
Not cool. And hey, listen, as we sign off here, we want to see more of these younger guys on Instagram, doing the things that will make them relevant, because they've got a ton of young guys coming up that
The eyes are on you. The eyes are on Hack. The eyes are on Daniela
Listen,
Mello.
and you can convert this into cash someday. You know what I mean? Like
The eyes are on Cody Blazik at deadlifting and stuff. I don't actually know him, but I feel like shouting him out because it's criminal to have 4,000 followers when you're number 3 of all time.
Maybe he should hit you up.
He should. I don't know what I'll do for him.
Get on the podcast. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for watching. This was episode number 55 of Table Talk Podcast. We're going to get Dave back in here next week, so I know you're looking forward to that. And
he'll give you the actual eyes. The man who witnessed strength history will tell you strength history in very, very short amount of time. So don't,
it's amazing.
Stay subscribed. Stay liking. Stay commenting. What do you want Dave to talk about?
That's what we really needed. Like, the more information that we have to work with, especially when it comes to strength history. We talk about these names, but what exactly is it that we want to know? Because Dave was at a lot of these meets.
He was at Andy. He was at Steve's.
Yeah,
they all happened in Columbus.
Yeah. The WPO in Columbus, where a lot of these things happened.
And even outside of powerlifting, guys, strongman, whatever
Anything.
else.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See y'all.
All right.